Hey guys, Editor Joker here. As I'm editing this video, I found a lot of the stuff that I was talking about and I grabbed news clips and headlines and kind of overlaid them so you can see what I see when I start talking about this stuff. Obviously, I didn't read down through the stories. I just put up the headlines. So as I'm talking through this video, if you're just listening, don't worry about going into the comments and correcting me. You can see I have overlays that either correct myself or validate what I was saying. The other thing, too, is I use a lot of buzzwords in this that I realize YouTube is going to demonetize this video because it's all controversial of what I talk about. So, as a reminder, please go over and start supporting me on betterbachelor.locals.com so I can do more content like this. You don't have to agree with me, but the whole point is let's have a conversation, and YouTube doesn't really like that. So if you'd follow the links down below, hop over, become a supporter today. I'd really appreciate it. And now back to me. Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. I'm using my headset again because my cable that goes to my normal SMB Shure microphone is on the fritz, and it keeps giving me crackling sounds. And this cable is a different type of cable, so I'm going to use this headset until I can get my other mic cable replaced. That's why I'm using this audio. I hope it's okay. So strong-willed men save the world once again. The reason why I do say it's saving the world is because there is an overwhelming desire by both the EU and the United States and our media and the crazy lefties to tell us to eat the bugs and stop eating meat and we need to eat more vegetables, and there needs to be rationing on meat and the cows and CO2 and ending the planet and all the other ridiculous things. And the only thing stopping them, the earlier, and I talked about this when the bug and the jab were out, the earlier in the process that you fight back, the less they get to do. So if you start fighting at A, you may never get to B. Or if they do manage to get to B and you fight them really hard at B, you probably won't see C because you just won't get that far. However, if you wait till M or N or O, and they say, well, we've gotten away with 60% of what we want, let's stop here, you've already lost. Or they might say, we've made 60% of the way and they didn't say anything, let's keep pushing, I think we can get the last 40%. So the earlier that people step up and fight back against people trying to control our lives, the better off we are. Well, if you remember, there was the Dutch farmers' protest, and they came out and they fought back because they were going to be forced to sell land. They were going to have to pay heavy fines and fees for diesel fuel and for nitrogen because supposedly that's bad for the environment, even though it's probably one of the most prolific elements in our world. And they finally pushed back, and they got elected to office, and they were able to tamp down the government going after them. But the EU was not satisfied. And so in Germany and in France and in the UK and in other countries, they keep pushing for the eat the bugs, and you will own nothing, and you won't have any farms. What kind of confuses me, and I'm going to get into this a little bit, and it's definitely, you could say, oof, that's kind of a hard take on that one, man. But when things happen that seem very nonsensical, like let's get rid of farmers who make our food. Okay, well, where are you going to get your food from? Like you're going to starve yourselves. Crickets aren't going to do it, and we still have cows, and they want to make this push, but when they want to take out the farmers before they have the new food source, kind of going, that kind of makes you say, like, are they trying to end us? Are we the carbon that they're trying to reduce? And there's part of me that definitely agrees that we are. Well, many people haven't seen much of this. I had to mute this because it has inspirational music over top of it. Many people didn't see just how many tractors and farmers. This is just one area of one protest. And you can see here, there are hundreds and probably maybe thousands of tractors that have just pulled up and blocked everything. So these protests have been going now for quite a while. And in France, I don't know if you saw it or not, but a lot of the French farmers were pulling up manure spreaders and spreading it on government buildings. They started tearing up the road leading to Paris. They lit a bunch of tires on fire, and they okay, if you want to save your environment, we'll just keep adding to it. It's kind of a dick move. But when you're fighting for your livelihood and probably what's been passed down through generations, and the government's going to tell you what to do, a lot of people are going to fight back. And when I often talk about, fighting back against governments, it doesn't mean you get your long-range hole punchers and you march on Washington hoping to, put some holes in heads. That's not what we talk about. This is what we talk about when we say fighting back. And there's a political cartoon you'll see where it's a politician at the front with a whip, and there's, 100 people bowed down to him. And he's whipping them, telling them what to do. And then 5 people stand up. And then 10 people stand up. And then all of them stand up. And before you know it, it's now the politician bowing down to the masses. This is a reminder of what can happen and the French are famous for their protests. Well, what happened, this is a story from just a week ago. And I could go back further, but they explain here from CNN, and I know CNN is trash news, and a lot of times they give it from their spin, but that's fine. That's fine in this case, because we want to know what they're thinking. They say farmers' protests have erupted across Europe. Here's why. CNN farmers are holding protests across Europe, clogging the streets with their tractors, blocking ports, and pelting the European Parliament with eggs over a long list of complaints from environmental regulation to excessive red tape. We are no longer making a living from our profession, one aggrieved farmer in Paris told CNN. While some of the most dramatic protests have been in France, similar action has been taking place in a host of other countries, including Italy, Spain, Romania, Poland, Greece, Germany, Portugal, Netherlands, and of course the previously mentioned Dutch farmers that stepped up a while ago. Farming makes up just 1.4% of the European Union's GDP, the latest figures show, but protests in Eastern Europe last year over cheap Ukrainian imports, which saw lengthy blockades at border crossings, show how farmers as a group are capable of causing major disruption. Both national governments and the EU are now under pressure to quell the fresh demonstrations. CNN takes a closer look. Okay. Now, you notice they do mention Ukrainian imports. This is key, and I'm going to mention this shortly when I start getting into my going down a well, maybe this guy's a little crazy type thought. I'll talk about that in a moment. And they talk about it, well, it's only 1.4% of Europe's Union's GDP. This is how you know politicians and news media are stupid. So what if it makes 0% of the GDP? It doesn't matter. This is where you make food, so you put in your face, so you live. Granted, foods today are a bunch of chemicals and they're a bunch of crap. But you still need flour, and even to make the crap, you still need flour and corn syrup and all these other crappy things, and that does come from, wheat, corn, other things that you grow. There's going to be a point where people are so stupid, they're like, well, we don't need farmers, just go to the grocery store. That's where we get our food. Okay, good luck with that. They say, what's happening and where? This week, the farmers' protest struck at the heart of the European Union when they rolled into Brussels on Thursday as leaders held a major summit on Ukraine. Notice they mention Ukraine again. Once camped outside the Parliament building, they lobbed eggs, blared their horns, and sparked fires. Belgian farmers targeted border crossings in the Netherlands, in Zandville, Meer, and Postel, causing delays. In France, farmers blocked major highways leading to Paris, as well as the cities of Lyon and Toulouse. Dozens of farmers set up tents and lit fires to keep themselves warm as they attempted to shut off routes to the French capital. At least 91 people were detained on Wednesday for obstructing traffic and causing damage near, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get 91 people, this is the part where countries change and politicians change. Oh, there's 20 protesters. Just arrest them. There's 1,000 protesters. Okay, we'll arrest a few of them, try to scare the rest off. There's 100,000 protesters. That's when governments say, all right, we're in trouble. We need to, and this is why you need strong men. This is why strong-willed men that say, we're not going to let you destroy everything for your agenda, this is how they do it. And you might say, well, you're being a little crazy about the, save the world. I still maintain if you don't stop them here, they're going to destroy the farmland, they're going to destroy crops, and then all of a sudden they're going to be looking for where are we going to get our food from? And by then it's too late. If you're looking for food when people are hungry and then you figure out you got to plant more food, you're about a season away from having an answer. And so I think these guys stepping up, and we know farmers, the guys that are driving these tractors, the guys that are plowing the fields, they're men. I don't know what percentage of farmers are men, but it's probably close to all of them. One farmer, Hugo Og, told CNN the current system makes a mockery of both farmers and consumers. Also this week, tractors in Greece marched towards the second biggest city on Thursday with the aim of blocking key routes inside the city. Images from Portugal showed long lines of trucks parked near the Spanish border. Last month, cities in Germany were brought to a standstill by thousands of rallying farmers, braving freezing temperatures, piling misery on Chancellor Olaf Scholz's governing coalition. Major road blockages stretched across cities from east to west, including Hamburg, Cologne, Bremen, Nuremberg, and Munich, with up to 2,000 tractors registered for each protest. These protests echo those of last year when farmers in Eastern European countries, included Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, demonstrated against the impact of cheap Ukrainian grain imports. Notice the word Ukrainian again, we're going to get to that, which were undercutting domestic prices and hitting the sales of local producers. They say, what are the grievances? They talk about the taxing and the trying to take away nitrogen. They talk about the taxing on the fuel, everything else. So let's move on to what's actually happened. So here in just, again, the last couple of days, from Politico, facing farm protests, EU, the European Union, eases demands in 2040 climate proposal. And I could read down this whole thing. I won't, to spare you time. But they say under intense pressure from farmers, European Commission has dropped key passages in a proposal for a new 2040 goal for cutting greenhouse gas pollution. Now, wish I had the video clip. Maybe one of you can find it, where he was talking to a group of, I don't know if they were activists or politicians. I think it was politicians. And he said to them, okay, you keep saying we need to cut greenhouse gases. What percent of our air is CO2 that we breathe? What percent is the CO2?
Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Wild guess, it's okay.
I'll bite 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? What about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
Price is right.
8. I'm gonna get the high end.
The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not half of a percent. It's 0.04%. And it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
And the woman's reply was, I don't know. And he asked another panelist, a guy next to him, do you know? Do you know? He went down the line, no one knew. And he said, it's 0.04. He said, do you know what level plants start dying off? Like plants start dying off? 0.02. He said, so we're spending these trillions of dollars and upending everyone's lives over 0.01% of our air. And I think that was very important because, number one, maybe his science is right, maybe it's wrong. I don't know. He had an answer at least. But the other key critical point of it is the people he was asking that are pushing for this stuff didn't have the answer. That's key. That's how you know this is politics. And why do they keep pushing for this? Because if you can buy the cricket farms and the land and you have the industry and you force people to stop doing what they're doing and start making them come to you for the food and the special authorization for blah, 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 well, you're going to make all the money, aren't you? You're going to have all the power, you're going to have the control, and you can tell people what to do when you say, you do what I tell you to do, or you don't get any food. That's what I think is very key under a lot of this. And to finalize, here from the Telegraph just 2 days ago, victory for Europe's farmers as Brussels caves in emissions targets and eating less meat. That's right, they wanted us to eat less meat. So I can pretty much say these farmers allow the rest of Europe to continue eating meat at least. The European Union has caved to angry protesting farmers, cutting its target to scrap specific agricultural emissions, which form part of the bloc's net zero drive, a demand to reduce nitrogen, methane, and other emissions linked to farming by almost a third. Remember those numbers I was just talking about, going from 0.04 to 0.03. That's about 25%. See, when somebody says, can you believe that, I don't know, this horrible thing has doubled, or this medication is 50% more effective if you have heart issues. This medication's 50% better than nothing at reducing your risk of heart attack. You say, wow, that's pretty good. But when you look at the placebos and the studies and the placebo group and everything else, you realize that if the chances were 95% you're going to stroke out, they go to 94.5%. And they go, that's a 0.5%. So of our group of X amount of people, hey, that's almost half of them that might be. That's what they do. That's what they do. And then they lie about the numbers. So if you take it from 0.04 to 0.03, they're going to say, look at that. We got rid of 30% of the emissions, but nothing really changed overall. They say on Tuesday, Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, a woman, of course, further concession by demonstrating to farmers by dropping her controversial proposal to have pesticide use within 6 years. A recommendation urging EU citizens to eat less meat was also removed from the plan. The concessions came amid mounting demonstration by farmers in all the countries I previously mentioned. Spanish farmers on Tuesday joined the movement by blockading major highways with convoys of tractors and burning tires. Meanwhile, blockades on supermarket distribution centers have left shelves empty in Brussels, while several people have been injured in traffic accidents. Who cares? Organizers have been threatened to continue disruption in the lead up to the European Parliament elections in June. You take away the farmers, you take away the food. You take away the food, you take away the people. Politicians are not known for being bright people. There's very few of them that are actually intelligent. They are charismatic, and they're very good liars. And so I have no doubts a lot of them say, well, we'll get rid of the nitrogen, and we'll get rid of this, and we'll do this, and we'll do it for the climate, and then people starve. The farmers know how to farm. Engineers know how to be engineers. Dentists know how to be dentists. Politicians think they know more than everybody combined. And that's the danger and the problem with them. But with these farmers stepping up and doing what they're doing, at least there's been a pause. I have no doubt they'll try again. But at least we get longer on God's green earth here before they try to upend our lives. Now listen to this. They say, the plight of the disillusioned farmers has become politically symbolic ahead of the vote. To quell their angry protests, which have sometimes become violent and caused destruction to cities, Ms. von der Leyen acknowledged net zero rules targeting farmers would need to be watered down. See, they won't even get rid of it. She said, our farmers deserve to be listened to, she told the European Parliament in Strasbourg. I know they're worried about the future of agriculture and their future as farmers, but they also know that agriculture needs to move to a more sustainable model of production so that their farms remain profitable in the years to come. Notice she keeps talking about profitable. Yes, farmers want to make their money, and yes, they need to make their money, and I think they should make, you want to know who should make more money than TikTokers and YouTubers? Farmers. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Up at the top is, fun videos to watch on YouTube. Somewhere in the middle is a good, strong economy and healthcare and dental work and all the other. And then down at the very bottom is breathing, drinking, and eating and staying warm. And these morons want to screw with that. Brussels is also rowing back on planned rules on animal welfare and allowing the cultivation of land left fallow to restore nature. Reduction in nitrogen, oxygen emissions was seen as a key pillar, but they don't know the percentages. That's what I keep saying. Her effort to placate the farmers came after mounting pressure from political allies ahead of the European parliamentary elections. See, it's elections. They want to say, okay, we get it. Now re-elect us. And then you re-elect the same people because a lot of people are mouth-breathing morons, and the same people then try to do it again. But if the elections are only every 4 or 6 years, they say, well, we got 4 years. Let's hurry up and get this done before elections come about. And people are stupid, and they go ahead and vote the same way. We always realize that farmers are citizens and don't want left-wing ideologies that dictate everything to them, he told the European Parliament on Tuesday. In a letter to the Commission, the Parliament's Green Group said the farmers' protest movement was no surprise to us. The root of the problem is clear. The majority of farmers simply cannot make a living from their work. They're trapped in a system that's killing them. The Greens also called for Brussels to halt trade talks with South America's Mercosur bloc, with competition from cheap non-EU products a chief concern among farmers. They keep talking about, well, they're very upset and they're very concerned we're getting all this food from other countries. Notice they mentioned Ukraine several times. Okay, I'm gonna, let me find the right clip here that I want to show. Okay, this is the first thing I wanted to talk about. Have you noticed how the EU and the United States, this is where I'm going down the rabbit hole. That's the news that men kind of are saving the world and these farmers are strong and wonderful and doing all the right things. That's the video. But where I wanted to go with this as well, why is it so necessary for the EU and the United States to, quote unquote, save Ukraine? Now, let me just say this. What Russia, I know people in Ukraine. I like the Ukrainian people. They were always kind to me when I visited there. I don't like what Putin is doing. I think it's wrong. However, there are a lot of politics involved, and there's a lot of groups in Eastern Ukraine that still spoke Russian and still want to be part of Russia. This much is true, and that much I do know from visiting Ukraine. Yes, I've had boots on the ground. Yes, I talked to people. Yes, I learned what's going on. The people in Ukraine said, our government is exceptionally corrupt, very corrupt, and the people are suffering, and the politicians at the top take everything. Now, this was I think this was before the latest regime change. I'd have to look. But nonetheless, there's a lot of problems over there. It's not so cut and dry as you've been told. But we still today are, even though there's hardly a man left standing in Ukraine, they keep pushing for more money and more fighting. And why? Well, from the Atlantic Council, land reform can make Ukraine an agricultural superpower. You notice they keep talking about the cheap undercutting grains and the cheap products and the foods coming in from Ukraine undercutting European farmers' prices and their ability to produce. This is just a guess, but there is part of me that wonders, is it so important for the EU and the United States to get Ukraine back? Like, let it get trashed, let them fall into misery, let Russia just beat them up and take them out. And then, with the help of the EU, because we know Zelensky's in the pockets of Europeans, the European and the United States, then let the EU and BlackRock and Vanguard from the United States come into Ukraine and rebuild it. And if you think I'm crazy, there was and I forget the video, it's out there if you want to research it, because you can fact check me, please do. But I'm going down a path I didn't think I'd be talking about off the top of my head. There was a video out there how somebody from either BlackRock or Vanguard or the World Economic Forum, somebody was talking about, the opportunity to rebuild Ukraine is going to be very profitable and very good for the United States and the EU and BlackRock and Vanguard and these companies. They're talking about going back in and rebuilding it under the vision of the world, the WEF, and under the vision of Europe and what Europe wants for Ukraine, and I think this is why. I think they want to go in. Ukraine's a very large country. The reason why they explain this, let me read this and then I'll keep ranting. Ukraine stands as on the threshold of historic change. The country will launch its agricultural land market on July 1st. This is from 2021. 2021, right about the time that Russia went in. It's no exaggeration to state that this is one of the most significant landmarks in the 30 years of Ukrainian independence. The opening of Ukraine's farmland market will provide a major boost to the country's already powerful agriculture section, helping to drive growth while eliminating corruption. The impact on the wider Ukrainian economy will be significant, could eventually add several percentage points to the country's GDP. Ukraine's land reform breakthrough would not have been possible without the requisite political will of the current authorities. For decades, it was opposed by Ukrainian tycoons and politicians who extended the country's longstanding moratorium and used the shallow land market to their advantage. Now remember, this is coming from a political bias. But supposedly, they have, I forget the name of the soil, but there is a soil that is in Ukraine that is exceptional. It's a very dark, black, rich, fertile land. It's unique amongst most countries. So it's very, very sought after. It sounds to me that, and I don't know when Zelensky got in, and I'm not saying that the two are tied, but everything starts coming together around the same time. Zelensky kind of comes in. All of a sudden, they're talking about open up all the land for all, I think something like 30% of the world's grain comes from Ukraine, or maybe the EU's grain comes from Ukraine. I'm spitballing. These numbers are not official, but I know it's a lot because there was talk that now that Ukraine can't ship out its grains, there's going to be problems with a lot of countries feeding themselves. I do remember that story. I think the EU was planning to use Ukraine as its farmland, shut down all the farming in the rest of Europe, and then the Ukraine being kind of friendly with the EU, that would be their quote-unquote farm for Europe. And then I think Putin came in and screwed all that up by the war and everything else. And I think EU and the United States are very angry about that. I think Putin screwed that up for them, and that's why Ukraine is so important for them, is because they really wanted to rebuild it and have it be their farm, and then they can tear down all their local farms and their land and, I don't know, turn it into housing for migrants. Now then you say, and again, I'm kind of going down rabbit holes here. Then you say, okay, why are we doing all this migration when we don't have any housing, when there's not enough food, when prices are skyrocketing? I think it's for twofold. Number one, the votes. You bring them in, you make them citizens, they appreciate you, they vote for you, they keep you in power. That's number one. Number two, and this is where I'm going I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just spitballing here and giving you guys something interesting to think about, because this is what I think about when I'm out walking the dogs and doing whatever. What if Europe was bringing in all these tens and hundreds of thousands of migrants into all these countries, and then once Ukraine becomes its breadbasket and the farmland for Europe, and some maybe with Canada and some maybe with the United States, what if they then say, we're going to make you citizens if you go live here in Ukraine and replace all the men that have been ended because of the fighting? Because I think something like 200,000 or 300,000 men have lost their lives in these battles. What if it's voters? That was primarily, and then they said, you know something? If we do open this up and all these men are gone, we can move all the men, these quote unquote fighting age young men, to become farmers for us over into the UK or into Ukraine. Because if you look at, this is from economic research from the Fred economic data. If you look at, this is unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate as of right now is roughly 3.6, 3.7 as of January. That's very low. As you can see, it's one of the lowest points on this whole entire graph. How are you screaming that you need more people? This is the United States, and I've heard it's kind of similar over in Europe. How is it that you keep screaming you need more people and you need to improve your GDP with more people? There's no jobs. The unemployment rate's very low. That means that most people have a job, and as you can see, this huge spike during the pandemic there. If unemployment's low, but it's not zero, and you say, well, we need more people, but we know they've been flubbing with the numbers, because even the United States, when you look at the jobs that Biden has been bragging about, he's, we lowest unemployment ever. Something like 50 or 60% of those jobs are within the government. That doesn't produce GDP. That is a liability for the United States. That comes out of our pockets, our taxes, to pay for government jobs. That's where half of them have come from. And the other half, a lot of it, has gone from full-time work to part-time work, meaning that as companies struggle, they say, okay, we don't need you full-time anymore. We're going to turn you into 1 or 2 part-time employees. Then we don't have to pay for benefits and insurance and all the other things. So a lot of it, but then you have 2 people working instead of 1. That's why they think that the unemployment rates are kind of like this. And then you look at the unemployment numbers and the job, I forget what they call it. But anyway, if you go back and look, they post job numbers, and then a month or 2 later, after they've posted them, they quietly revise them down by a lot, sometimes half, which means like jobs economy is great. Look at all these jobs. And then 2 or 3 months later, when the new jobs report comes out, they go, yeah, let's go ahead and change those old numbers because they were like wrong by 50%. So what happens when the unemployment spikes? What happens when all these Europeans and in the United States and in Canada, what happens when you can't pay them benefits anymore because we're $34 trillion and we were just $32 trillion in debt a year ago. Now we're 34.5, and we're just starting 2024. What happens when you can't give out the free money anymore because you don't have any more money? So I do think that they were bringing a lot of people in, and I do think it's for votes. But I also wonder, were they planning to send them to Ukraine? And because here's the Europeans' numbers on immigration. I think they were maybe thinking about sending them off over to Ukraine to be farmers. That way they could close farmers are very usually conservative, salt of the earth, very free, independent, and they kept their money. But if BlackRock and Vanguard and EU government and everybody else kind of takes over Ukraine after it gets, turned into rubble, and they can take it over, then they can say, well, we own this land, so any profits that come from these farms, we get to keep. Because the farmers, well, they're our citizens because they're immigrants, and we sent them up there, and we made them legal, and now, and then they'll put some, they'll use Zelensky or whoever, and then when it comes to voting for the European Union or voting for things, he's in their pocket, and he'll do whatever they say. I know that sounds very crazy, and it is likely crazy. But you do have to ask yourself, why are they trying to get rid of farmers and food? Ukraine has a lot of farmland that's some of the best in the world. They're very insistent on making sure that Ukraine is free and that they will go in and rebuild. And they're missing a whole lot of guys. They could have stopped this a long time ago with negotiation talks, but negotiating was off the table per Zelensky. He said that. So then you wipe out 200, 300, 400,000 men. And then, so now you have empty land, basically. You've got the EU and the America drooling at the bit to help you with BlackRock and Vanguard with their trillions of dollars. Isn't it plausible? Isn't it plausible that this is maybe where it's going? I don't know. But they sure seem to care an awful lot about, Ukraine, and they don't seem to care a lot about a lot of things going on in other countries that are very similar. If you look at what countries do, they never want to free a people or do the right thing for no reason. There's always money, there's always power, there's always politics behind it. That's just my guess. I'd like to hear what you guys think down below. But this is, I like doing these brain candy exercises where I say, how can I put all these puzzle pieces together? I think that's one way we could do it. I think that makes sense. And it does explain a lot about why they're trying to get rid of their own farmers. And I think Putin screwed up the plan. I think he screwed up the plan. And they're going to have to find another way. I still think they're going to try to do it. And no matter how much money they throw at Ukraine, Ukraine's a lost cause at this point, unfortunately. And again, there are very many, many nice people that I met, Ukrainians, that are wonderful people that I wish this wasn't happening to. But don't think for a minute the politicians care about you or anybody cares about you. It's a power play. It's a money play. That's the only reason anybody cares. Anybody at the top cares. Because otherwise you'd see them having fits over a lot of other worldly issues that people don't seem to care about. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below. I just thought this was kind of a fun thought thing, and I'd go over and I don't know. That's just what I think. I'll have another video out for you guys here probably tomorrow. I know this one's a little long for my old stuff, a little short for my new stuff, but I'm trying to mix it up and keep y'all from getting bored. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one.